recorded at Get a Grip Studios in Toronto, Canada. Get a Grip Management production and in association with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Presented by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, the National Lighting Bureau, the Illuminating Engineering Society, and of course, the International Dark Sky Association. This is Starving for Darkness. Hang on a second here, folks. That's right, hang on a second. Michael Colligan, co-host of Starving for Darkness here. Just to tell you real quick before we get into the conversation, which is super important for you to hear, that you need to go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com, especially if you're a contractor or a distributor, Greg Eric.
That's right, and they're coming out with a new exterior line of product, or they have come out with it, and they're going to continue to add to it, and they're dedicated to making dark sky friendly lighting and potentially dark sky compliant as we go. For now, though, they do have a dark sky full cutoff wall pack, a variety of wattages, Kelvin temperatures, and a precision crafted optical lens that's ideal for increased fixture spacing and uniformity. So less lighting fixtures needed because it can provide more light out of the one fixture. So check that out.
Go to KeystoneTech.com. That's right. Hold on. Here comes Starving for Darkness. But before, KeystoneTech.com.
Hello, listeners and darkness lovers. Welcome to another episode of Starving for Darkness. My name is Jane Slade, along with Michael Colligan, and we are so pleased to bring Barry Johnson, a member of the Philadelphia Outdoor Lighting Council. Barry, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. And we start every episode with the same request, which is please tell us about a dark sky experience that was moving to you and that left you in a place of awe and feeling your own humanity here on Earth.
I think that would be a visit to Big Bend National Park, which is a remote area away from civilization. FM radio did not come in. AM you could get at night. And the sky was pristine, Milky Way vivid. And I think that's probably the best experience that I've had. But I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Outdoor Lighting Council, not Philadelphia.
My apologies.
I'm near Philadelphia, but our organization is the Pennsylvania Outdoor Lighting Council. So that's my dark sky experience. That's the thing that got me interested in outdoor lighting, as a matter of fact, is the night sky.
I see. Well, to be honest, I have Philadelphia on my mind because of the recent mass event of fatalities with birds. And I really wanted to actually jump in and pick your brain about that because I know that you do so much work with municipalities to guide lighting to a more sustainable place. And we've been recently celebrating the dimming of the lights in such a major city as Philadelphia. So what do you know about that case and what happened there?
Well, I know probably about as much as you do, what I read in the paper. I'm not in Philadelphia, so I know it occurred, and that's about it.
Okay.
I mean, I can't give you I can't tell you more than you know.
All right. Well, I know that you work a lot with municipalities. And so I read recently an article that you wrote about how it makes you sad that kids won't see the night sky. So tell me about the work that you do on the Pennsylvania Outdoor Lighting Council to advocate for better lighting.
Okay, well, we're a volunteer organization. There are 4 of us. I'm in Montgomery County in Pennsylvania. We have a representative in Pottstown, one in Mechanicsburg, one in Lebanon. So it's 4 people, 4 volunteers, and we are volunteer consultants, I guess you would say, and we also work with municipalities to ask to get them to adopt improved outdoor lighting ordinances. Some Pennsylvania municipalities have absolutely nothing in their zoning code about outdoor lighting, about light trespass, glare, are the 2 biggest concerns. But we have about a trickle of contacts through our website, mostly involving complaints about light trespass. And then if it's near enough, I go and visit it. And but in any case, I ask them for pictures, and we give them our advice on how to handle it. Sometimes it's a landlord has put in some obtrusive lighting unwittingly. Most of the time, it's neighbors or nearby businesses that are the offenders, if you will. And so I give them the vocabulary that they need: glare, light trespass, obtrusive lighting, nuisance. If a person of ordinary sensibilities would be offended by the lights, it would generally be considered a nuisance, and it should be corrected. In the past, we've had outdoor lighting workshops for municipal officials. 2020 pretty much put an end to that for the time being. But this has been done on a county basis. Delaware County, Chester County, Bucks County, Berks, and so forth, municipal officials, where we basically try to educate them and then offer our outdoor lighting ordinances. The model ordinance was basically developed by Stan Stubbe, who's a consulting engineer, and unlike most engineers, he is knowledgeable in lighting. The typical township engineer is good on stormwater runoff and so forth, but knows the basics only of outdoor lighting. So we recommend that they, when lighting plans are submitted, they contact us. This is that a developer would submit an outdoor lighting plans for a proposed Wawa or whatever it is they are planning to do. And then that it should be reviewed by a knowledgeable consultant who can assess whether it meets the municipality's requirements, if they have any. But an ordinance basically quantifies expectations. So that's why we think they're important.
It's interesting. And for listeners who are not in the Pennsylvania area, a Wawa is, say, a 7-Eleven or a local convenience store. I have spent some time in Pennsylvania, and where you hail from, Barry, it's a lot of farmland. And I say this because it's actually surprising how easy it is, even in rural areas, for light pollution to crop up, because it's such an ease of LED installation that we've really made it almost fail-safe to be able to install a very, very bright light. So I really appreciate the work that you do, because it sounds like what you're doing is offering to be an intermediary and offering really valuable language to be able to communicate the important issues, which can sometimes be between 2 parties where there's a lot of tension. So we were actually had recently a guest on, Ryan Andreessen, and he does a lot of advocacy with municipalities, and he actually found that the term light pollution actually was triggering to council members or board members of communities. Have you found that if you use the term light pollution, that it's offensive to the people who like light?
I don't use the term light pollution very much, but we use the terms glare, light, trespass, overlighting, direct uplight. For area lighting, such as parking and roadway, light emitted on an upward path above the horizontal plane is waste. It's a waste component. And so we basically try to get dark skies as a side effect of improved outdoor lighting practices. I haven't gotten much response from municipal officials personally by talking about light pollution, which I think most people think of as urban sky glow. There's a few definitions of light pollution, and but it's not that people don't care about dark skies. Many times they are anxious to tell us about, oh, when I was in the Navy aboard ship out on deck in the middle of the ocean, how spectacular, or some national park, some remote area. They do care about it, but municipal officials, they're not in that business. They're basically trying to broker the best environment for their constituents. And typically what happens is some proposed development comes in that they really don't want. They don't think of it as a community asset. And if they don't have an outdoor lighting ordinance, it's too late once the application's filed. So the model ordinances we think are well designed, the ones we have. There's one for subdivision and land development that's commonly used by township supervisors. And then there's another variation that's tailored to zoning, which is used by the code enforcement officers and the zoning hearing board. And so we tell them, if you don't have this, you're asking for trouble. It may be a car dealership or any type of business that's going to have a display lot. Boats, for example, where high value items are outdoors, and they want to light them up, presumably for security. But we basically emphasize that a lighting system is not a security system. It's a component. It can be a component of a security system, but unless you have a means to be notified about an intrusion and then some means to respond, you don't have a security system simply by leaving the lights on all night. It's wishful thinking. So that's our approach. And we work with businesses, individuals, and municipalities to basically try to educate the public and explain that there really is a better way. Most people don't realize that so much of our outdoor lighting doesn't really adhere to recognized good practices, where you minimize glare, minimize energy consumption. You can't eliminate glare. If you stand under the light, you're going to see glare.
Light is glare.
But for normal viewing angles,
Yeah.
Glare should be minimized. Use the right amount of light, no uplight, late night turn off. Outdoor lighting is really for people. And when the people are not present, the lights really should normally be turned off or at least dimmed to a lower level, so that, for example, in a shopping mall parking area, during business hours, you have the potential for conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. So you need a certain amount of light there for safety.
Mhm.
But once 10, 11 o'clock rolls around, it makes sense to turn off at least part of the lights that are illuminating the parking area, particularly outdoor parking. So
It's difficult though.
pretty much the advice we give.
Yeah, it's difficult to. I have a lot of sympathy for the officials and the the municipal workers and people that are in these positions, because to me they seem torn between the presupposition that more light brings more safety, and the needs of developers and roadway lighting, and then the this dark sky darkness issue, the light trespass, whatever you want to call it. You have a lot of different terms there. I really like that. And there's this for the first time. I mean, it looks like you've been doing this for quite a while, but in most places, it isn't counterbalanced. Do you encounter in your work, in your volunteer work, do you encounter resistance or a sort of that presupposition that, hey, more light is safer, and there's no getting around it? You encounter that a lot?
Well, that's an attitude that we encounter, sure. But typically, it's a person that just needs to be educated. So that's a perception, and the world runs on perception. But when the perception's wrong, you have to educate people.
What's it? Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I looked at your website, and I like the simplicity. I like the way that you're approaching this in terms of giving people the terminology to speak to the problem. And so, how much of your work is awareness creation? A sort of giving people
I'd say most of it.
Most of it, okay.
Our website has a lot of information that's useful to individuals and businesses. But I have to say, most people don't know it exists. Yeah. And we're typically we're contacted by a college, let's say like Rutgers, who's going to have an environmental conference, and we were invited to make a presentation in March 2020. And so you can see that really didn't come to fruition. The conference was scheduled, but it couldn't be held due to the pandemic. So we educate in that way, also through our website. But typically, people contact us when someone near them puts up a bad light, and so we have at times the offender is a total hardhead, and really not much can be done unless you want to sue them. In other cases. And really, most of the time, they're just not aware. They just can't imagine that their light is unwelcome on my bedroom wall. So,
why is that? There's something with pollution. Like, so I run a business here where we recycle fluorescent lamps, and I've run this business maybe 14 years now. Okay, it's 2007 or something. We started it. We actually had to change some local Ontario regulations to be able to do it. But so we did that, and then we started the business. And in the beginning, people felt like they had a right to throw mercury-containing lamps into the garbage. Like it was something that they didn't want to change. And you would talk to people like, hey, you can recycle those lamps. It's less than 10% of the cost of the lamp, and it's really easy. We'll just pick them up when we drop off the new bulbs and all this kind of stuff. People were very resistant to that, and I've seen that erode away slowly over the last decade, where now everybody recycles their fluorescent lamps. It's almost impossible to find someone who's willing to throw this stuff in the garbage now, and everybody knows about it. Have you seen an increase? Like there seems like with light, there seems like, well, it's just light. It's not pollution. I'm not offending you in any way. I have a right to shine a light as far as I want to off my property, and I can light it up like a prison yard. And too bad for you.
Well, the key word there is on your property, and yes, you do have that right, but. Typically, the lights are not properly shielded, and the light's not controlled to the property being illuminated, and that's where the trouble starts, and the complaints, and the intrusion. So you have a right to live in and enjoy your home, whether it's a rental or you own it. And if a car dealer across the street feels that they need to illuminate their valuable property, I don't disagree with that at all. But their lights should basically be limited direct illumination on their property. So there's a court case in Colorado where a dealer, this is where a commercial and residential district join.
Mm-hmm.
And they put up really bad lights, and basically every time the homeowner came out at his front door, he was looking down the barrel of high intensity discharge lights. This is about 10 years ago, before the LED revolution. And his bedroom windows were bathed. And so he brought it to the attention of the business owner, said, well, all you have to do is put up curtains and shades. So he said, well, if you were making noise, would all I have to do is put cotton in my ears?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair point.
So he ended up having to take out a mortgage and sue them, but he did win in the appeals court. And they basically held that an individual does not have to put up curtains or install any equipment in order to accommodate a business interest.
I'm so shocked by that.
This was a holding in Colorado.
I'm absolutely shocked. I'm stunned by that.
I don't think any of us would persist in behavior that annoyed the neighbors.
No, it's
But
stunning to me.
Some people do. And so you don't get many light trespass, light pollution cases in court. They don't really belong in court. They should be regulated by the municipality. That you can't completely eliminate light coming from an adjacent property, but you can eliminate the direct illumination. So it's always going to scatter off their pavement, their yard, their house, the building, but that's indirect. And so direct illumination needs to be controlled. And in many cases, the municipality doesn't want to be bothered. And getting them to enforce the ordinance that they adopted a few years ago is the other part of the challenge. So we're volunteer consultants.
You know, Jane, it's interesting, and I don't think we've brought this up on Starving for Darkness before, but, you know, there's a lot of regulation without enforcement in Ontario. Like, there's a lot of regulations that are out there that are just blatantly and totally disregarded every day. And there's the Ministry of the Environment or whoever's in charge of enforcing these regulations just has no interest. You can't even get them on the phone. You know, you can't even call them. So I think regulation without enforcement or model lighting ordinances that are not delivered upon in a municipality is a real negative position to be in for people like yourself and for Starving for Darkness, where if the laws are already in place, you know, this should be happening. Have you had any success with enforcement in Pennsylvania? In Pennsylvania. I almost said Philadelphia again. In Pennsylvania, with encouraging these inspectors to get out there and do their jobs.
Upper Dublin Township in Montgomery County adopted our model ordinance almost word for word, the standalone version of the ordinance, but they enforce it on I guess you'd say a complaint basis. And so there was a restaurant that had floodlighting for their parking area, but it also illuminated the second floor bedroom windows of the homes across the street from them. And so one of the people there contacted me, and when we get a contact, we normally look up to see what the municipality has as far as any outdoor light, any regulation of outdoor lighting. Normally there's a nuisance ordinance, but in any case, I told him, we'll contact the code enforcement officer, whose name I happened to know at the time. He's since retired, but was a very good man. And, said, here's the sections that they're violating. And all they have to do is have someone go up there and put a piece of sheet metal, piece of aluminum flashing to screen off your houses. And after a couple calls, these people don't normally work at night, code enforcement, but they did. They came over and directed the owners, really the landlord. The people that ran the restaurant don't own the property, but the landlord got an electrician to go up there, basically aluminum flashing, and apparently there was no purpose-built shield in the catalog, or they didn't know what they had, but they just went up with some sheet metal screws and aluminum flashing, and that was it.
Yeah.
So,
Barry, I want to get into some of the nitty gritty of what you do, because I think there's important conversations to flush out. So here you are positioning yourself as a volunteer intermediary to try and bring sustainable lighting to your communities. So when you have been in a situation that has had tension, what is some of the language that you've used to bring peace between the two parties and to find resolution?
well, somewhat it depends on the who the offender is, if you will, and in many cases they're just simply unaware that it's a problem and they'll take care of it. Others are completely indifferent to anyone but themselves, and it's not much you can do with that kind of person. And most people, occasionally, someone is so disturbed by what's going on that they actually take them to court. And but we always advise to be, polite, persistent, and don't make people angry. So there's a few ways to express that, but basically we advise that they not be confrontational and say, how would you like it? Let's say this was your house. How would you? Would it be okay if I put a big floodlight and aimed it at your house? So usually no. But,
are you saying not to use that type of language?
Some people are complete hardheads. So this is what we're faced with.
So you have an escalation strategy, I guess, where you know what I find is very.
You normally bring it to their attention.
Yeah.
And if they don't, many times they're apologetic. Oh, I had no idea. Others are indifferent, or don't want to be told anything. There's a lot of different personalities that you'll encounter, and many of them own outdoor lights and operate them.
A very powerful tool, which has been forgotten largely, but I still retain in my repertoire, is the anonymous letter, actually. So when you send somebody an anonymous letter and they don't know who it's from, there's an element of paranoia that you then create in the perpetrator, that they don't know who it is. And who's concerned, and I found that I've never done it with any light trespass issues, but I've used it many times in my life with neighbors that were doing things with dogs on chains, garbage on the side of their house, things like this. So I find that the anonymous letter can be a good first step, and oftentimes because of the paranoia that sets in, that the person doesn't know who is complaining, that they tend to move quicker in that instance. I don't know why. I think it's got something to do with the paranoia, Barry. So I'll throw that into your repertoire for the listeners out there. Anonymous letter is very powerful, actually.
We'll keep that in our back pocket.
If you want to make sure they'll open it, put something lumpy in it, because people have to open a lumpy letter. Nothing mean. You could put like a coin in or something, but
Sure.
people want to know.
Oh yeah, you also handwrite it and write private and confidential. That even better. Private and confidential.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
It hadn't occurred to me, but we might find a use for it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I wanted to, Jane. Can I jump onto something else here? I
Yeah,
just
jump
wanna-
in.
Yeah. So, have you had? What about municipalities that are breaking their own ordinances? Have you encountered that before?
Oh, that don't adhere to their own ordinances?
Yeah, like street lighting
Sure,
or
all
with
the
their own
time.
buildings and that. Oh,
I went to a township meeting where they did have an outdoor lighting ordinance. It was minimal, but it was basically scientifically accurate, and the lighting on the township building wasn't compliant. So it's a wide spectrum of compliance. One of the most recent encounter where someone contacted me about a business across the street, the municipality zoning ordinance was completely silent on outdoor lighting. I mean, they had smells, they had noise, they had so forth in zoning, but nothing. And they were completely negligent on outdoor lighting issues. Nothing there.
is there any statewide ordinances, or
Not
is
in
this?
Pennsylvania.
Is it all
Outdoor
done
lighting,
It's all done at the municipal level.
it's at the municipal level, not even the county level.
Sounds like a sales strategy to me, Jane.
Let alone the state.
Like if I'm actually going to start figuring out in Ontario how it works, and I'm going to research if there's lighting ordinances, and I'm going to look for offenders, and then I'm going to go sell them lights. I mean, I think it's an interesting way to look at this, because if the ordinances are already in place, you can activate the local, educate, create awareness as you're doing. I love listen, Barry's in the trenches on this issue, Jane. He's on the front lines of the issue, and I love it. And it's just, there's so many ideas here. I'm just looking at it from a sales perspective. Why not, lighting people who are in the lighting distributors and the contractors listening to this, why not find out if your town has a local ordinance and see if you can go educate the local inspectors and tell them about this. And then maybe you can, help the perpetrators stop perpetrating these trespasses. I'm very interested in that. I wonder how if it works that way in every state, or if there's some states that have statewide ordinances that, local municipalities have to write their local ordinances in conformance to, or if it's just municipality by municipality across the board.
When the municipality updates their zoning, this is in Pennsylvania now. There's a county review, but it's not a county-wide ordinance, but it applies to the municipality. And one thing I've found is, and there's a link to this on the Pennsylvania Outdoor Lighting Council website, to find your local ordinance. And a great number of local ordinances are online now. It saves the township a lot of trouble if people can go, if developers, lawyers, whoever it may be, residents can go, anybody who wants to do anything in the township can go online and find a searchable zoning ordinance, subdivision, land development ordinance, so forth, whatever they have. There's a few ways that it can be codified, but this is called E-Code 360 is the one that I'm linked to. And but not the whole country is on it, but a lot. So you may, and I don't recall if it covers Canada or
It does.
not.
I'm looking at it right now.
Everything the United States has, Canada has better.
Get out of here. That ain't true.
Except maybe winter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
You have better frostbite in Canada.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there, sometimes there's a perception of Canada that's not necessary by you Americans. That's not necessarily the reality, but we're happy to take it. We'll take it. You know what I mean?
I mean, having lived in Canada being American, I can tell you there's a lot of things that Canadians get right, and there's a much
Yes.
more profound sense of connection to the environment
That's bizarre.
that is more homogenous across the nation of Canada than in the United
Right.
States. So that's just for one, but there are many incidences of that. So I got Canada's back on that one. But I do want to say, Barry, I think what you're doing is really important work, as Mike said, because you really are in the trenches. And I can't imagine. I remember actually, I moved into this brand new apartment in Brooklyn. I was so excited. And then it turned out that my upstairs neighbor walked around in high heels all the time. And I could hear her TV like literally blaring. I knew what she was watching. And I mean, I spent the first night being like, what am I going to do? I'm locked underneath this person.
Mhm.
And so there were resources for me. And I did eventually have it was a series of difficult conversations trying to undo this person's habits inside their castle. And I think
Did
that's
you buy
one
him
of
a
the
new carpet?
problems.
Did you
I
buy him
did
a new
suggest that.
carpet?
I mean, we went through a lot of different things, and eventually we found harmony, which was very lucky because it's all about the person that you are dealing with.
Yeah.
And I remember moving out and I hugged her goodbye. So it all worked out. But I will
Good
say
work.
I had resources, and I had
Yeah.
resources for sound like you are for light. And I can't imagine, what people would do if they didn't have the POLC website when they needed you. So
Mhm.
you're providing amazing resource. And I want to dig into the fact that, you know, when we talk about language, it doesn't just appear overnight. You don't just have the right words to say and the syntax that works. This takes practice over time. And, I have a post-it on my desk right here that says how to have the conversation, because many people come to me saying, how do I have this conversation? Even my mom's neighbors, they have lights blasting. And I think we need more people who are willing to step in and be an intermediary and an advocate for darkness as you're doing. So thank you so much for providing that language as a tool, because I think it's far underestimated how needed just the simple tool of language is.
When you say
Well,
light
we try to give them
trespass,
the vocabulary that they need,
Yep.
which is a powerful step in many cases. Oftentimes they say, they put up this light. This can't possibly be legal, can it? And the answer is it depends on where you are and your municipal officials, what their motivation is. I mean, in Pennsylvania has municipalities they're only 300 people. The municipal government they're all volunteers. They run some kind of business or live there, and they're going around in coonskin caps, and they have nothing as far as outdoor lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what
Mm-hmm.
we're faced with.
So you are aided by the State Department of Environmental Protection, and you've also helped persuade, at the time that this article was written, 35 townships to adopt better lighting. And
Yeah.
so how has the perception, do you feel that there's been a sort of tipping point in perception that makes your work a little easier? Where are you
Well,
in that?
there's somewhere around 2,500 municipalities in Pennsylvania. So we have the first bullet hole with 35, but and I think it's maybe more than that now. And these have not necessarily adopted the entire ordinance, but they have adopted it at least in part and taken our ideas and put them into there. Some of the things that are in there, not every municipality needs. But it's about 40 different townships and boroughs in Pennsylvania that have picked up at least some part of it. I went to talk to Swatara Township, which is near Harrisburg, and they had a small section on in the environment, and it was taken word from word from our model ordinance. They didn't do much about it, but they had it. So in most of the time, it's on a complaint basis.
How similar is your model lighting ordinance to the model lighting ordinance that was written and developed by the International Dark Sky Association and the Illuminating Engineering Society?
It's much simpler, and it's the IDA, IES is elaborate, and for this rural to semi-rural municipalities in Pennsylvania, ours are a better fit. And there's always going to be some subjective judgments done when you're decide, I'm the code enforcement officer now, what do I do here? And so we recommend that they have some means to measure illumination, or they have a consultant that they can call on. Some of the municipalities in Pennsylvania are hardly amount to anything. Others, like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, lighting is so embedded there and population density is so high that we don't spend a lot of time with them. Although I have had some success in Philadelphia because it has a decent outdoor lighting section in the zoning ordinance. And people live there, don't think to look online in many cases. And so I have a link, and I send this to them, and it says, here's what the zoning ordinance says. So we had a restaurant that unwittingly was committing light trespass, and the owners were good corporate citizens. And once it was brought to their attention, they installed shielded luminaires, and this was in Philadelphia. So but that's what we do. Well, fighting light pollution is basically working with people.
Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do is
working with people. I'm retired and I have time now in fact, all four of our consultants are retired. One of whom is a consulting engineer. And he's really our brain trust. I've learned a lot from him. But also the International Dark Sky Association is an important resource, and the Illuminating Engineering Society, another important resource, and then the European counterpart of the IES is the CIE. They're pretty similar. So they're basically our model ordinances. The general thrust is that the outdoor lighting that a municipality has, it should be in accordance with the recommended practices of the IES. And they have recommended practices for roadway, parking, outdoor, so forth. The IES is mostly about indoor lighting, but it includes outdoor lighting too. And so we think of that as an important resource, what their standards are, what their recommendations are. And the IES recommendations are basically a consensus of experts in the whatever the field it is. It's a consensus, and standards are basically by their nature arbitrary. So if you have a standard, it should be something that in general people agree with. So that's what they do. But the IES and the International Dark Sky Association are important resources that I refer people to all the time.
So
and I wanted to refer to them myself.
Sure. I mean, yeah, great organizations. They're both supporters and presenters of this show. So they're part of the presenting group of associations that are supporting Starving for Darkness. I wanted to ask you though, I really liked your website. I liked the little cartoon, the light trespass cartoon. I think that's fantastic. But I wanted to ask you about your success with the sign and billboard lighting. I know that horizontal illuminance is a huge contributor to Skyglow, and also they're very offensive. Like I don't think people, once you point out this stuff to people, like look how bright that roadway sign is, and the guy's got some political message on it, or he's advertising jobs, or what. And, he's probably a good guy at the end of the day. He just wants to say something outside of his factory. But some of these signs are very offensive when you drive by them. They can hurt your eyes at times. Have you had a lot of success with billboard and sign lighting, and is it covered by the lighting ordinances?
It's covered by the lighting ordinance, by our model ordinances, and in some case, well, now we have LED outdoor advertising, basically. And as far as Skyglow, the light pollution that we think of as a light dome over a populated area, they're not as bad, because those were the traditional illumination was a floodlight at the bottom aimed at a paper coating, on a billboard, and then a good amount of the light went directly up or reflected off of the billboard. So as far as urban Skyglow, the LEDs, although in many cases they're too bright, our ordinance requires that they be dimmed at night. If you're going to have the same sign, it has to be brighter in the daytime than it does at night. And this needs to be automatic based on the illumination that's present. So, but as far as getting them under control, no, we don't have that much charm and influence. So
I bet you there'd be a lot more resistance.
There's more and more of it, and it's not as bad as the traditional. As far as Skyglow, what I think of as light pollution from an astronomical standpoint.
But do you find there's more resistance? I would assume that someone who's advertising something or trying to putting a message out there, that there's going to be.
You see them along highways. These outdoor advertising billboards that may be 40 feet tall, from grade up to the top, and 40 feet wide, and they're advertising truck stops, Coca-Cola, restaurants that the motoring public might be interested in. And the industry standard is that they change every 8 seconds. So if you have one of these, it's going to light, even if you don't have a direct view of it, it's going to light up the sky for a mile, let's say. And so your bedroom window every 8 seconds is going to get this flash as these roadway billboards, even though the luminance from them may not be uncomfortable. When you're, let's say, the first quarter mile, that's where you live, it's going to light up your whole sky in that direction, and your bedroom window, and flash every 8 seconds. So these people are basically, these are not a community asset typically. Someone in the has property and they're paid to host this huge sign, and they don't want the municipality to regulate it. They want the revenue.
Sure.
So this is the dilemma that township and borough officials face. That on the one hand, some voter here wants this because it's a revenue stream, and then everyone else says, yeah, but it's an eyesore, and it's not doing us any good. The people who put these in, I think of them as hit and run artists. That yes, we'll have this, and it's not going to be any problem to you, and so there are more and more of them. Since they're programmable, they're going to completely replace the traditional billboards. Just like the LED revolution that we're in. You don't see lighting plans that specify anything but LEDs. It's all it is now. And LEDs certainly have some advantages. There's no mercury. an LED is inherently directional. But what we find is that when they replace lighting, the total emitted lumens are considerably higher than what they had. And but for roadway parking, LED, and I'm not sure why this is. It's about a 50% savings on the electric costs. You might think it'd be more than that, but it's typically about 50% for a roadway interchange or a big parking area. It's about 50% off the electric bill. So it pays for itself. And if they don't overlight, you end up with better lighting, less glare off site, because they're typically downlights with some forward throw. But the biggest offender are floodlights, where they're trying to illuminate a big parking lot with just one gigantic floodlight. So when you're downstream from that, you're going to get it. So that's our experience.
So Barry, how has the night sky changed since you started your work in your corner of the world? Has it gotten better?
I don't see it as any better. I recall as a child when there really wasn't much outdoor lighting, when mercury vapor didn't exist yet, and then that came through, came across the United States, and then skies were pretty dark. If you got 10 miles outside of a major city, things were really pretty good. You could see the night sky. And now you have to be a city the size of New York City or Philadelphia. You have to be 100 miles out to sea before the light dome disappears. But what keeps me going is that had we not done this and never lifted a finger, it would be worse. So I can't see any improvement that I can really point to, but we've had our successes, and it takes time to educate the public.
So what's on the horizon for your work? What are you planning to do next?
We're going to do pretty much what we do now, but we'll start up again our outdoor lighting workshops for municipal officials, and get ourselves invited to these academic conferences at Rutgers, and basically tell anyone who listens, and maintain our website. It does not have a modern look to it, but to convert that to something like DreamHost, I don't have the time for it. So it basically looks like a 1990s website, but it does the job and it's accurate.
Yeah, I was going to say the 90s called and they wanted their website back, but it has a lot of great. It has a lot of great.
Were first built.
It has a lot of great information and resources on it. It works.
Yeah, it does.
And that's polcouncil.org.
polcouncil.org.
Yeah.
We found
I will say
been taken.
It looks like it is curated. So regardless of the style, you can tell that everything that's on there has been hand chosen to be able to be a resource. So I definitely felt like you were holding space, that it wasn't some old website that hadn't been touched. Yeah, it didn't feel like it hadn't been touched. So maybe stylistically you could do something different, but I do think it looks like a very up-to-date, well-curated website. And I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I just want to thank you for all that you're doing to be in the trenches, to deliver the really important language, to assist in those really important, difficult conversations. So Barry, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we part ways?
My advice is always make sure your lights are well designed. Any lights that you own or control, that they provide visibility, the right amount of light, late night turn off, no direct up light, and don't annoy the neighbors.
Well, I'm very grateful.
Fantastic advice.
I'm very grateful.
That's what we do. We're outdoor lighting missionaries.
Yes, I'm very grateful you exist, and I love your chipping away at it style. And I think that incremental
We're
improvements
four
are
old
super
people,
important.
so we don't have a lot of clout, you might say, but people contact us on a regular basis most of them have a light trespass problem. So
Well, thank
Well,
you.
you
that's
have
the
clout with
POC
us,
story.
so thank you so
Okay,
much.
good talking with you.
Bye for now, Barry.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Psst, psst. Hey, don't go anywhere yet, because we have some instructions for you. It's Michael and Greg from Get a Grip on Lighting. Yeah, we do the ads for Starving for Darkness. You got to go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Light made easy, Greg.
You've been rattled that off real well. There's a new line of exterior fixtures from Keystone that they have available, and they're going to continue to expand on it. And they're doing things right. And one of those that they're doing right is in their wall packs, they're making them full cutoff. That's going to eliminate undesirable sky glow and glare. And that's what we all want. It looks nice. It fits the profile of a lot of your old nasty fixtures and has multiple wattages and kelvins that can cover you there.
Get rid of those old nasties. Go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Thanks for listening to Starving for Darkness. Bye for now.